I want to give a brief history of the Swami Prabhavananda Christopher Isherwood translation of the Bhagavad Gita. This literary work was one of the best-selling English translations and arguably the most intelligible and readily absorbed for a Western audience. It has sold over 1 million copies and was, for decades, a required textbook at many leading universities in their courses on Asian religion and philosophy. Swami Prabhavananda, a senior Swami of the Ramakrishna order, who had a deep personal understanding of the spirituality of India, reached out to his disciple Christopher Isherwood, an acclaimed English prose author, to assist on the translation. Together they created a work of outstanding spiritual and literary merit, which penetrated the intellectual firmament of the English-speaking world of the mid-20th century. On the historical significance of the Gita itself, Swami Prabhavananda wrote in the Spiritual Heritage of India, also long used as a college textbook. In the course of its long history, reaching far back into unrecorded past, Indian religion has had its share of sects and doctrines, of reformations and revivals. It has nevertheless preserved at its core, unchanged, 4 fundamental ideas. These may be simply expressed. God is. God can be realized. To realize God is the supreme goal of human existence, and God can be realized in many ways. The first systematic attempt to harmonize the many doctrines of the Hinduism is to be found in the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible of the Hindus. By the time of the epics, many schools of thought with varied ideas of God and Godhead, as well as varied paths called yogas, had come into existence. They were all incorporated in the teaching of the Gitas like pearls in a necklace. The path, the Gita assures us, matters little. It is the goal that is supreme. And what is the goal? It is only, once again, to realize God. Here's a short summary of how the Gita first came to the West and its influence. The Gita derives from the 25th through the 42nd chapter of the 6th book of the Hindu epic poem, the Mahabharata, and dates from the 6th to the 2nd century BC. It is generally accepted that the Gita was added to the Mahabharata, and some scholars, including Swami P., believe that the Gita had existed some time as a standalone text prior to that. In the 18th century, Sir Charles Wilkins went to India to work for the East Indian Company as a printer and writer. In 1785, he published the first English translation of the Bhagavad Gita. It proved to be a major influence on Romantic literature and the European perception of Vedanta philosophy. The Gita and other Hindu texts have influenced historic American thinkers, including Presidents Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, who had copies of the Gita and Upanishads in their libraries. Note that Jefferson, Adams, Vivekananda, and Prabhavananda all left the body on the 4th of July. Jefferson and Adams in the very same year, within hours of each other. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the leader of the Transcendentalist movement of the mid-19th century, received a copy of the Wilkins English translation of the Gita. In his essay titled Immortality, he paraphrases from the Gita. The soul is not born, it does not die. It was not produced from anyone. Unborn, eternal, it is not slain, though the body is slain. Henry David Thoreau was an American author, poet, philosopher, and also a member of the Transcendentalist movement. He's best known for his book, Walden, about living simply in nature. He wrote, "In the morning I bathe my intellect in the stupendous philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seems puny and trivial." So how did the Prabhavananda Gita come about? Here are Swami P's own words. "Once I was away for a rest in Palm Springs. I had a Gita translation with me. When I read the 12th chapter, I felt that the meaning had not been brought out. I saw a deeper meaning in it. So I started to translate, and then Chris helped me, Chris Isherwood. I translated and Chris edited. When Peggy Kiskavan came, she read what we had done, but could not understand it. Then we went to Aldous Huxley. Chris read aloud and Aldous listened. Aldous said, "No, that's not right yet. Forget that Krishna is speaking to the Hindus in Sanskrit. Forget that there's a translation. Think that Krishna is speaking to an American audience in English." Swami goes on to say, Chris rewrote the whole 12th chapter of the Gita following Tennyson, I think. He produced the book in a week. He was inspired. Huxley's advice reinforces the Gita instruction from Swami's own guru, Swami Brahmananda, the spiritual son of Ramakrishna, and also from Swami Turiyananda, another monastic disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, and a powerful and loving influence on the spiritual career of the young Prabhavananda. Upon opening the Gita, the first thing we see is Swami's dedication to Swami Turiyananda, to the memory of Swami Turiyananda, who was regarded by his master, Sri Ramakrishna, as the perfect embodiment of that renunciation which is taught in the Bhagavad Gita. Once Swami P. asked Swami Turiyananda how to teach him how to study the Gita. Swami Turiyananda advised him to take one verse at a time, meditate on its meaning, and live the verse for a week before going on to the next verse. In that way, he was to study the entire Gita. People have wondered why Swami P's translation left out the traditional commentaries, which are commonly found in other translations. Swami Yogeshananda of Tribuco, here today, had found an entry in his monk's notebook where Swami P describes Swami Brahmananda's advice about how to approach the Gita. In our monasteries, both in India and the West, the Bhagavad Gita is, of course, a principal text for teaching and study. Swami Brahmananda, the first president of the Ramakrishna Order and Mission, Mahatma Mission, said to some of the early group of young men, "Let your first reading of the Gita be without commentary." Swami Sardananda says in his book, The Essence of the Gita, "It is not necessary for you to study all those commentaries. Your minds have not yet been influenced by any particular philosophy, and they are, so to speak, still fresh. It is enough to understand the meaning as it reveals itself to you spontaneously." Swami P explains that when they consulted they did in fact consult the writings of the three greatest commentators, but wishing to avoid bulky and distracting footnotes that interrupt the flow, they have incorporated any required explanations within the text itself. Both Swami Turiyananda and Maharaj instilled in Swami P that the Gita is a vital, even interactive life companion, to be embraced by the individual's whole and constant being, not locked away on the intellectual plane. These ideas are expressed in the Prabhavananda Isherwood translator's preface. The Gita is a gospel. Its essential message is timeless. In words that belong to no one language, race, or epoch, incarnate God speaks to man, his friend. Here the translator must forget all about Vedanta philosophy and Sanskrit terms, all about India and the West, Krishna and Arjuna, past and future. He must aim at the utmost simplicity. Extremely literal translations of the Gita already exist. They have aimed rather at an interpretation. Here is one of the greatest religious documents of the world. Let us not approach it too pedantically, as an archaic text which must be jealously guarded by university professors. It has something to say, urgently, to every one of us. It must be emphasized that while Isherwood was an accomplished author, he was neither a Sanskrit scholar nor a spiritual adept. Here's how he describes the division of the functions. The Swami was fluent in English, and his knowledge of Sanskrit equally good. At that time, I knew no Sanskrit whatsoever. Even today, I could easily write down my little vocabulary on one side of a postcard. My share of the collaboration was therefore secondary. Prabhavananda told me the meaning of a phrase, and then we considered how its meaning could best be conveyed in English. He also described the painstaking rigors of the work as the slow, thoroughgoing process of translating a text, considering all the significance of each word, and often spending a day on 3 or 4 verses. The Prabhavananda Isherwood of the Gita was published in 1944 and was meant to be an effective introduction of the Gita to an educated Western audience at a time when little accurate information was known about Vedanta by the West. It received major reviews in leading national publications, likely because of the celebrated author, Christopher Isherwood, was involved. Time magazine wrote, "To preserve the everlasting simplicity of the Gita's words, Isherwood and his teacher have collaborated on this latest translation, designed to bring his message closer to the ordinary, perplexed men and women of today. The result is a distinguished literary work. The translators have presented a version of the great dialogue that makes it easily understandable to the common reader." The New York Times reported, "Mr. Isherwood has devoted his fine literary gift to a new translation of the Bhagavad Gita, working with Swami Prabhavananda. The little book is a self-contained one. A complete stranger to the Hindu gospel can pick it up in 1 or 2 evenings and follow the great poem from its terrific beginning to its sublime end." I wanted to conclude with I hope the audio comes through, but with a reading that Christopher Isherwood did of their translation.
Arjuna speaks. Some worship you with steadfast love. Others worship God the unmanifest and changeless. Which kind of devotee has the greater understanding of yoga? Sri Krishna answers, those whose minds are fixed on me in steadfast love, worshipping me with absolute faith. I consider them to have the greater understanding of yoga. As for those others, the devotees of God the unmanifest, indefinable and changeless, they worship that which is omnipresent, constant, eternal, beyond thought's compass, never to be moved. They hold all the senses in check. They are tranquil-minded and devoted to the welfare of humanity. They see the Atman in every creature. They also will certainly come to me. But the devotees of the unmanifest have a harder task, because the unmanifest is very difficult for embodied souls to realize. Quickly I come to those who offer me every action, worship me only, their dearest delight, with devotion undaunted. Because they love me, these are my bondsmen, and I shall save them from mortal sorrow and all the waves of life's deathly ocean. Be absorbed in me, lodge your mind in me, thus you shall dwell in me. Do not doubt it, here and hereafter.
Thank you.